Cecil the Lion got a lot of publicity. We talked about him at some length one day last week. I guess it was the day after the dentist went into hiding. And Jorge Amsel, certified firearms instructor, writer, and author with Gun Digest's Shooter's Guide to Concealed Carry. His website is Guns and Tacos, Guns, the letter N, tacos.com, is on the line with us. Jorge, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. So why, in your mind, is it just fine to go over to Africa and kill lions?
Well, it's no different. To me, it's no different than eating a hamburger. If anybody who eats meat has no room to criticize. I mean, you're more than happy to pay someone else to do the dirty work so you can enjoy your hamburger, but God forbid someone actually go out there and do the shooting himself. I
don't recall the dentist eating that lion. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, they skinned him and they left the flesh behind on the ground. This is an apples and oranges comparison. Trophy hunting is a completely different thing from food hunting. I don't have a problem. I grew up in Michigan. I lived in rural Vermont, rural New Hampshire for years, for decades, and I've known a lot of hunters who are literally subsistence hunters, people who are living below the poverty line, and if they get a deer in the fall and during deer season, that's their food throughout, until the middle of the next summer. I don't have a problem with that, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about going over to another continent, killing an endangered species just to have a trophy. Do you think McDonald's is going to start passing out stuffed deer heads?
Well, you raised a lot of interesting points.
Or excuse me, cow heads?
Cow heads, yeah. I do try to talk about sort of the hunting ethics that are involved in this, and a lot of different hunters have different ethics. For example, I know a lot of hunters who won't shoot anything unless they intend to eat it. So, for example, they won't shoot prairie dogs because, A, you can't eat them because they all have the plague. But a lot of people go out and shoot prairie dogs. It just depends. So, in your mind, would everything would have been okay if you had eaten a lion? That's what makes the difference?
No, because the lion was not basically grown for food. We by eliminating the top predators here in North America, by killing off the wolves, we have created a situation where there's deer overpopulation. And so what we're doing is we're cultivating deer for food, at least in the states where hunting's a big deal. With cows and pigs and chickens and things, we grow them for food. And speaking as a guy who's been a vegetarian since I was 16 years old, I actually have some empathy for the argument that, if you're eating meat at the supermarket, you can tone down your complaining about people killing things. On the other hand, that lion was not grown for food. In fact, to the contrary, we've gone from a population of about 500,000 lions back just 15, 20 years ago to 40,000 or something like that in the world right now. I forget the numbers, but it's very, very low. That lion was killed for his head, and had he stayed in that game preserve that he was lured out of, he would have generated a lot of money for the country, for helping the species. Instead, that $50,000 that dentist paid went to the two guys who guided him, and I guarantee you they stashed it in a bank account someplace. It did not go to help either the animals or the poor people in those areas. And I see this, and I see like Dick Cheney when he shot Harry, what's his name, in the face. It was because they had captive, I don't know if it was pheasants or doves or whatever it was, in these cages, and the guy would open the cage and the doves would fly out, and Cheney would swing his gun around and shoot it. That doesn't seem to me like sport. Killing things for fun or killing things to have trophies to say, yeah, I killed that. That sounds to me like somebody who's like some guy who's got too small a penis.
Well, again,
what do you need to prove?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you here, obviously. Do you think it makes any difference to the lion why he's being hunted? If it's to mount his head on the wall or to eat him for a subsistence.
You can't eat a lion. He's a top predator. We don't eat predators.
We eat bear. That's a predator.
Bears are sort of predators. Bears are omnivores. The vast majority of their diet is actually vegetables and fruits.
All right, but people do hunt bear in this country.
Yes, they do, and there's I think that's kind of, depending on where you are in this country. I think that's kind of dicey, but when I lived in Vermont, they very, very carefully calibrate the bear hunting to make sure that they don't reduce the herd, as it were. There's a different word for bears than for deer. to a point where it becomes an endangered species.
Well, they do the same thing for lions. They control how many licenses are issued for lion hunting. They control how many licenses they issue for elephant hunting, for giraffe hunting.
Yeah, and it should be zero for all of these species, in my opinion.
Well, here's the problem: when you make it,
these are not animal foods. These are not food animals. Excuse me.
Elephant most certainly is a food animal. Hippopotamus certainly a food animal. Zebra.
Maybe when they were as common as the bison were in North America, but they're not that common anymore. And the countries in Africa that have these kind of animals can make a hell of a lot more money on tourism than they can on bringing in small penis gun club guys.
Well, small penis or not, big wallet, and they actually make a lot more money selling hunting licenses than having tourists take photos of the animals.
Actually, no. That's well debunked. The tourism produces a lot more money for all of the African countries that have game preserves. I've spent a fair amount of time in Africa. I've never gone on a big game hunt or anything like that. But it's these countries are making money off tourism.
But you can do both. They have no incentive.
Not if you're killing off the things that people are paying to come look at.
Well, you're like you said for bear. You're hunting them in a controlled fashion, a specific number that keeps the population healthy.
But people don't go to Vermont to look at bears. We don't have, when I lived in Vermont, they didn't have safaris to go out in the woods looking for bears. You're mixing up apples and oranges here. They're completely different things.
Okay, well, there's still plenty of lions for people to go look at. There's not.
No, there's not. The lion population is crashing, and when a population drops below a certain point, your genetic diversity starts to vanish, and you're really, really messing with a species. You're putting them on the road to extinction.
Well, then you reduce the number of licenses that you issue.
How about taking it to zero?
None. Well, in some cases,
what is noble about killing a lion? I don't get it.
Well, that's a completely separate argument. I mean.
That's my entire argument, is that this is something that people do out of some sort of neurotic need to show that they're tougher and bigger than the lion, and I think that it's bizarre. I think it's a psychopathology. It's
no different than hunting any other animal.
That's not true. If you're hunting a deer for food, I mean, I get it. Some people will take the buck and they'll put the antler rack up on the wall, but they're hunting an animal that has been. We've reduced the predator. I think, frankly, we should increase the wolves and stop hunting the deer too. But I get it that there are people. I've known people. Like I said, when I lived in Vermont, the guy who lived down the road from us made a living sharpening chainsaws. He could not afford to buy meat in the store, and every fall he'd get a deer.
Yeah, but the vast majority of hunters, it's cheaper for them to buy meat in the store than to go hunting.
Depends on where you live and what you're doing, but not if we're talking big game hunting. I'm talking about big game hunting here, and I'm saying there's no justification for it that I can figure out. Can you explain to me what the justification is?
There is no ethical difference between any kind of hunting.
That's not true.
Because
hunting for food is a completely different thing.
But you don't need hardly anybody in this country needs to hunt for food. Okay,
I disagree. I disagree. You have never been in the poor parts of a rural state like Michigan, Vermont, or New Hampshire.
Do you think the majority of hunters in this country need to do it for the food?
No, I'd say it's probably about 20%.
I'd be surprised if it's that much. So 80% of the hunters aren't doing it for the food. They do it because they enjoy hunting.
Yeah.
Well, then how's that any different than hunting a lion?
Because deer are not an endangered species.
So you control how many licenses you issued because the population is a small population. They issue very limited licenses for elk. They issue very limited licenses for mountain lion. Sometimes, people pay tens of thousands of dollars for a tag for, some of these mountain.
Jorge, we're out of time. I think what we're coming down to here is just dueling values, basically, and which means that we're both right and we're both wrong.